For our final and closing plenary, we're very excited to think about CHI for Good in one more way, and that has to do with learning. Obviously, this is a learning community. CHI helps us all learn and helps us all think about how we can be better in terms of HCI and how we can make the world a better place with new technologies. Our speaker is going to be helping us all learn and understand how learning can really change here in the 21st century. And he's made quite a difference with his company and his ideas, and we're very excited to welcome him.
Sal Khan founded the Khan Academy because he had a cousin who needed some help with math. I love that because it speaks to that sort of helping others and scratching the personal problems. And I think that's such a CHI kind of way of solving problems, right? Like, well, let's solve this one problem right here. He has several degrees from MIT and from some other slightly less august institutions. He has taught literally millions and millions of people. We're really delighted to have Sal Khan here as our closing plenary speaker. Sal Khan, can you come up on stage? All important. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I always like to start these presentations just getting a sense of how familiar folks are with Khan Academy. How many of you have actually used Khan Academy? Oh, good number. How many of you have no clue of what Khan Academy is? Good, that's why we're here. All right. So those of you who are familiar with Khan Academy, you might associate it with a collection of videos, and I'll talk about how all of that got started. But what we'll hopefully appreciate over the course of this presentation that it is much more than just videos. But just to get everyone on the same page, I will start with a little sample of what at least the videos look like.
Of these interactions are just due to the gravity.
This is an age right after Isaac Newton.
I'm told the humidity makes it feel hotter. Why is this?
Excellent question, LeBron.
And you can just see the pleasure he had.
Can you determine which light bulb is being switched?
Things actually can interbreed, although for these two in particular, it seems like the mechanics would get kind of difficult.
And I can keep playing around with these numbers and see what kind of colors I can come up with.
If this does not blow your mind, then you have no emotion.
I thought Euler's identity would go well with all of you, so. As I mentioned, it's much more than just videos. What you see here, this is our kind of adaptive software where students can go, they can pick their grade level, they can go ahead at their own pace, they can remediate if they want. There's a whole series of game mechanics, they get unlimited exercises. These are exercises that are aligned with what they actually have to learn in school, and you know, there's all kind of fun badges and prizes as students progress. And there's much more than that. That's just a small sample. Now this is, you know, just a snapshot of where Khan Academy is today. We're being used in some way, shape, or form in almost every country. There's over 1 million educators using us, close to 40 million registered users. They're doing a ton of problems. But before talking more about this and where this is all going, I want to rewind a little bit and talk about how all of this got started. If you go back to 2004, I was a year out of business school. My original career, I was a computer scientist by background. I came out to Silicon Valley, worked in tech for a little bit, went back to business school, and in 2004, I was an analyst at a hedge fund. And I had some family visiting me in Boston. I actually had just gotten married. And it came out of conversation that one of my cousins, Nadia, was having trouble in math. She was in 7th grade. Because of her not doing well on a placement exam in 6th grade, they were placing her into a slow math class in 7th grade. And I immediately said, well, you know, this is a big deal. If you get put into that track in 7th grade, it has all sorts of implications on what happens next. So I talked to Nadia about it. She said, yeah, it's unit conversion. I just don't get it. I said, hey, how about when you go back to New Orleans, I work with you. I'll tutor you. And she was up for it, so we did it. And a long story short, you know, we started tutoring over the phone using Yahoo Doodle or whatever was available back then. And you know, after work for me, after school for her. And slowly but surely, she got unit conversion. Then she got a little bit caught up with her class. Then she actually got a little bit ahead of her class. And at that point, I became what I call a tiger cousin. I called up her school, And I said, you know, I think Nadia Reimagined should retake that placement exam from last year. They said, who are you? I said, I'm her cousin. And they somewhat surprisingly let her take that test. And that same Nadia, who was being placed into a slow math class, was now being placed into the advanced math class. And so I thought that was a pretty neat thing that happened, a little bit of an intervention on my part. I was able to connect with the family member who lived 1,200 miles away. And so I was kind of hooked, and I enjoyed the subject matter that I wasn't able to do in my day job anymore. And so I started working with her younger brothers. And then a few things happened over the next 18 months or so. I worked for a very small firm. It was myself and my boss. And my boss's wife got a position as a law professor at Stanford. And so we moved out here. But more importantly, word got around the family that free tutoring was going on. And so I found myself every day after work with about 10, 15 cousins, family, friends, all over the country. We tried to do it on speakerphone. It was really hard to schedule. But even then, I saw a common theme that regardless of whether, you know, a given cousin was an A student or a B student or a C student, they all had gaps in their knowledge. They might be in algebra, and they were having trouble in algebra, not because algebra's hard, but because they were a little shaky on exponents or on decimals or whatever else. And so I started writing some software for them to give them practice. And if they didn't know how to do it, it would tell them the steps. And then I, as their tutor, I could see what they were working on, when they were working on, things that I could dig in more when we got on the phone. And all my friends knew that I had this crazy tutoring project. And it was in November of 2006. I was at a dinner party, and I was showing off this software. And that software was actually the first Khan Academy. I literally, you know, the domain name was there. It was almost a bit of a joke. It was me and my family. It had nothing to do with videos at that point. And over dinner, the host, his name's Zuli Ramzan, a classmate of mine from college, he said, well, Sal, this is all cool, but how are you actually scaling up your lessons? And I said, you know, Zuli, that's a good point. It's actually very hard. What I was able to do with Nadia, I can't do with 10 cousins. I feel like I have to repeat things. Even the scheduling is hard. And Zuli says, well, I have an idea. Why don't you record some of your lessons as videos and upload them onto YouTube for your cousins? And I immediately said, no, that's a horrible idea. YouTube is for cats playing piano. It is not for serious mathematics. But I went home that weekend. I got over the idea that it wasn't my idea. And I decided to give it a shot. And you know, those first videos were just the things that I saw my cousins were having trouble with. Negative exponents, logarithms, simple equations, you know, some of trigonometry, et cetera, and I started doing more and more of this, and I started telling my cousins, hey, watch this. If you have any requests, I'll make videos for you. And that way, when we get on the phone, we can dig a little bit deeper, do, you know, more interesting problems, things like that. And after about a month, I asked them for feedback, and they somewhat famously and gave me the backhanded compliment of saying they like me better on YouTube than in person. And at first, this is counterintuitive, that they would like the kind of the virtual cousin versus the real one. But when you view it from their point of view, it made a lot of sense. And we've all experienced this. You're trying to get your head around a technical or any subject. It might be a little intimidating. It's the first time you're seeing it. And there's someone there, no matter how non-judgmental they're trying to be, they're there saying, hey, it makes sense, right? You get it, right? And you feel pressure to say, yeah, it makes sense. Or you're in an algebra class and you're a little bit foggy on decimals that you should have learned in 4th or 5th grade. You're embarrassed. You don't want to tell your cousin or your teacher or your parent. If you're in a calculus class, you forgot some of your algebra, you're embarrassed. But now it's at your own time, at your own pace, there's no judgment. And it's worth noting that they weren't saying that they didn't appreciate having me in their life. That was super important, and in some ways, it liberated our conversations to be more about that. To be more about, well, let's think about the metacognitive skills around mathematics. Let's think about what you might want to do. Let's think about how it applies into the world. And so I took that as positive feedback, and I just kept making more and more and more of these videos. And after a few more months, it soon became clear that people who are not my cousins were watching. And at first, I just start to see the view count go up, and then I start seeing comments come in, and a lot of those early comments were just, you know, this is early 2007 now. A lot of these comments were just simple thank yous. Even that I thought was a pretty big deal. I don't know how much time you spend on YouTube Most of the comments are not thank you. They're a little bit edgier. So, but then they got intense. I started getting comments and notes on YouTube. That video was the reason I was able to pass my algebra exam. Or I was thinking about dropping out of high school until I realized how interesting that part of physics is. Or I'm retiring from the military and I wanted to go back to college, but I was afraid to until I saw those videos, and now I'm ready to go and engage in the mathematics. I remember in the early days, I brought my wife over. This was maybe spring of 2007. I said, this is unbelievable. Look at this note. It was a letter that a mother had written me, and she wrote that 2 of her sons had a learning disability, and these videos were the only way that they were able to keep up with their class. And because of that, her and her entire family prayed for me and my entire family every night. And so you can imagine how especially strange that felt for me. You have to remember, I was working as an analyst at a hedge fund. I wasn't used to people praying for me, at least in that way. And so I kept going, the viewership kept growing, and by fall of 2009, I had set it up as a not-for-profit organization, and I was convinced that there's something real here. And so my wife and I remember we looked at our finances, we had some savings, essentially for a down payment on a house, but we figured, well, surely, I could take a plunge and maybe try to work on this and turn it into a real organization. And I was already talking to some foundations, and I was pretty hopeful that one of them would step up and give at least enough resources for me to be able to do it. And so I took the plunge, I quit my day job to try to set up Khan Academy as a real thing. And anytime you do anything entrepreneurial, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, you almost have to start with that delusional optimism, where you just assume that, okay, this makes a lot of sense, the social return on investment here is through the roof, surely someone will fund it. But you quickly come to terms with reality. You have meeting 4 or 5 with that first funder, and they say, well, this is really cool, but it's not exactly what we fund. Then you have another meeting, oh, we already allocated our budget this year. And after about literally 20 or 30 of these meetings, you start to wonder what you've just done. Our first child had just been born. We were digging into our savings about $5,000 a month. I literally did wake up in the middle of the night and cold sweats, just like, what have I done? It's not just my future. I have a family. That down payment on a house was quickly not becoming a down payment on a house. And so you can imagine, this was probably one of the most, if not the most stressful times of my life. And I was getting a few $100s off of PayPal, people donating $5, $10. If it was any of you, thank you. But then all of a sudden, May 2010, so this is 9 months after I quit my job, and I was genuinely questioning everything about what I had done, all of a sudden a $10,000 donation came in. And so I immediately see who it was. Her name is Ann Doerr. I saw that she was based in Palo Alto, so she was local. We were in Mountain View. And so I immediately emailed her, and I said, thank you so much for this incredibly generous donation. This is the largest donation that Khan Academy has ever received. If we were a physical school, you would now have a building named after you. And Ann immediately emailed back and said, well, I used your site myself. I had stuff on the financial crisis and economics that she apparently really enjoyed. She was using the site with her daughters, and she said, I'd love to meet up. I'm local and learn more about what you're doing. And so we met up in downtown Palo Alto, Indian buffet restaurant over lunch, and Ann asks me, so what's your goal here? And I said, well, when you fill out the paperwork with the IRS to be a not-for-profit, there's a part of the form that it says mission, : and they give you about 1.5 lines. And I filled out a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And Ann said, well, that's ambitious. How do you see yourself doing that? And I told her, just to be clear, this is a mission. I don't plan on being able to just check it off this weekend and then move on to healthcare or something. But I showed her, I used to walk around with this big stack of testimonials from folks from around the world. I had screenshots of that software that I had written for my cousins. I was showing her the usage count, and I said, the dream here is translate into the language of the world, obviously videos, but every modality, definitely exercises, ways for students to communicate, to get interaction, to get feedback, and eventually ways to form communities and teach each others, ways for them to prove what they know, and that could be used for them to plug into the formal academic system or plug into a career somehow. And Anne said, well, you know, you've made a surprising amount of progress. I only have one question. How are you supporting yourself? And in as proud of a way as possible, I said, I'm not. And so she kind of registers that, and we part ways. And literally 10 minutes later, I'm driving into my driveway, and I get a text message from Anne, and it says, you really need to be supporting yourself. I've just wired you $100,000. So that was a good day. And then, frankly, that was the beginning of a whole series of crazier and crazier events. A month later, I was running a summer camp with a buddy in Portola Valley, which is not too far from over here. And the whole idea behind running a summer camp, I never viewed all of this virtual lectures and virtual exercises as somehow a replacement for a physical classroom. I always thought, well, look, if lectures can happen at students' own time and pace, if they can get exercises and progress at their own pace with feedback and things like that, well, it liberates the classroom to do higher order things, to have a dialogue, to do simulations, to work on projects. And so that was the focus of this summer camp that I was experimenting with. And I was in the middle of one of those simulations where I had 6 7th graders playing a game of Risk, while the other 20 traded securities based on the outcome of the game of Risk. It's a good game. And while that was happening, I start getting text messages from Anne, which you can imagine I now take very seriously. And there were 6 or 7 of them, and it wasn't clear what order they came in. It was somewhat cryptic, but they read along the lines of, this is Anne texting, I'm at the Aspen Ideas Festival. I'm in the main pavilion. Bill Gates on stage. Walter Isaacson just asked Bill what he's excited about. Last 5 minutes, Bill talking about Khan Academy. So I didn't know what to make of these texts, what did make sense. So I immediately boot the nearest 7th grader off of a computer, and I start looking for some evidence of this thing that Anne is talking about. And in about 5 minutes, I was actually able to find the video footage. Walter Isaacson asks Bill Gates, what's he excited about? And this is what I saw.
There's a new website that I've just been using with my kids recently called Khan Academy, K-H-A-N. Just one guy doing some unbelievable 15-minute tutorials. My favorite vignette is that guy, Salman Khan. He was a hedge fund guy making lots of money, and he quit to do these little web videos. And so we've moved, I'd say, about 160 IQ points from the hedge fund category into the teaching many, many people in a leveraged way category. So, you know, that was a good day, the day that his wife let him quit his job.
So you could imagine what was going on in my head then. I mean, I was like, is this really happening? It was surreal. It was strange. I mean, he's talking about my wife. And I actually, I mean, I remember I was shaking. I was nervous. Those videos were for Nadia, not Bill Gates. And I went home that evening. I clearly remember dinner that night with my wife. And I'm like, you know, this is so strange. And what do I do now? What's the protocol here? Do I call him? Guessing he's not listed. And they left me in that limbo state for about 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, I'm in my walk-in closet, about to record a video, when all of a sudden I see my cell phone rings, and it's a Seattle number. So I answer it. Hello? Hi, this is Larry Cohen. I'm Bill Gates' chief of staff. You might have heard that Bill's a fan. Yeah, I heard that. And if you're free over the next few weeks, we'd love to fly you up to Seattle and learn more about what you're doing. And I was looking at my calendar for the month, completely blank. And I said, yeah, maybe next Wednesday. Got to cut my nails, do some laundry, but I think I can meet Bill Gates. So we had that meeting, and it was strangely similar to the meeting with Anne, where I said, hey, this is what it is today, but I want to build it out, reach every student in the world, create tools for teachers, ways for students to interact with each other, et cetera, really become a place where anyone could get a free world-class education. And at around the same time, some folks from Google reached out, also, and I had no idea about any of this, even 3 months before, and they were all independent events, and the folks from Google apparently were using Khan Academy with their own children, and they said, what would you do with more resources? And I told them the same thing. And so it all came together, fall of 2010. We got our first real funding from the Gates Foundation and from Google, and we started really building. We got office space, started hiring out, designers, engineers, a team. And what we immediately started investing deeply in was the software piece of Khan Academy. And what you see here, this is what we call our knowledge map. It's no longer a primary navigational tool for Khan Academy. At one time it was, but it's still there behind the scenes. And I like to show it because it shows how we think about a progression through mathematics. So each of these circles are a skill or an idea in mathematics. The ones at the very top, it's basic addition or even counting. There's kindergarten standards here. And as a student shows mastery, if you were to click on one of them, if it was the primary interface, you would get as many basic addition questions as you need. If you don't know how to do it, you could get the steps for one question and get feedback. There's videos there to help you. But then as you show mastery in that, it'll then progress you to, addition where the sum is more than 10, or basic subtraction. And it keeps doing that all the way down to today. This graph in math, we go much beyond math, but in math, this graph goes down to calculus and statistics, and we hope to keep on going. And in a lot of ways, what I just described, where you master a concept and then you move to the next level, is common sense. This is the way that you would play a video game. You keep working on level 1, and only when you beat level 1, you go to level 2. This is the way you would learn a martial art. You keep practicing your white belt skills, and only once you've mastered it, you go take a test and you become a yellow belt. But what we point out, this is not the way that a traditional academic model is structured, the one most of us grew up in. What traditionally happens is we group students together, usually by age and around middle school age and perceived ability, and we shepherd them all together at the same rate. And what typically happens, let's say we're in a middle school pre-algebra class and the current unit is on exponents. The teacher will give us a lecture on exponents, then we'll go home, do some homework. The next day, review the homework, get another lecture, homework, lecture, homework, lecture, homework. That'll go on for about 2 weeks, and then we get a test. And on that test, let's say I get an 80%, let's say you get a 90%, let's say you get a 95%. And even though that test has identified gaps in our knowledge, I didn't know 20 or 30% of the material that happened to be on that test. Even the A student, what was that 5% she didn't know? Maybe it was a careless error, maybe it was something important. Even though we've identified those gaps, the whole class will then move on to the next concept. A concept that's going to build on those gaps. It's probably going to be negative exponents or logarithms. And then it'll happen again, where I might get 70% or someone's get 80%, more gaps, and then you build on that again. And that happens throughout your entire academic career. So at some point, and we've all seen this, we've seen it happen to our peers, or we might have even had it happen to ourselves. You hit some class, it happens a lot in math, but it happens frankly in every subject, where what the teacher is saying doesn't make sense. It might be in algebra, it might be in calculus, and it's not because the algebra is fundamentally difficult or that you're not bright, but it's because you forgot you don't know what the 0th power means, and that was crucial for understanding that equation. And so, to appreciate how strange this is, imagine if we did other things in our life that way. Say home building. So you bring the contractor in, and you say, I'm told we have 3 weeks to build the foundation, do what you can. So the contractor, they do what they can, and maybe it rains, maybe some of the supplies don't show up. 3 weeks later, the inspector comes and says, okay, that part's not quite up to code, the concrete's still wet over there, I'll give it an 85%. You say, great, that's a C+, let's build the first floor. Same thing, we're gonna build the first floor, you have 2 weeks to do what you can. 2 weeks later, the inspector comes and says, oh, it's a 70%. Okay, well, not so great, let's build the second floor. And you keep doing that, and all of a sudden, while you're building the third floor, the whole structure collapses. And if your reaction to that is the reaction you typically have in education, you might say, oh, well, maybe we had a bad contractor, or maybe we needed more inspection or better inspection. But that wasn't the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem was the process. You're artificially constraining when and how long you have to do something fundamental, pretty much ensuring a variable outcome. You take the trouble of identifying the gaps, and then you just ignore and build on top of it. And so what we're describing here in this graph, and it's not our idea, it's actually a centuries-old idea of mastery-based learning, is instead of holding fixed when and how long you do something with a variable outcome, A, B, C, D, F, do it the other way around. What should be variable is that when and how long you have to learn on it at your own pace and your own time. And what should be fixed is that you really should learn basic exponents because that's foundational for everything else that you're going to learn in mathematics. Now, everything we do at Khan Academy, you know, it's great like anything on the internet. We care how many people use it and how long do they spend on the site, and because that's at least some proxy for impact. But we're in it, especially as a social entity, to make sure we're really having impact. And so recently, we started saying, well, let's just start surveying students at some colleges and say, has Khan Academy had a meaningful impact on your life? And we were hoping that maybe 5% or 10% would say yes. But what was exciting, and we did the first surveys at Stanford and Harvard, and eventually we want to do it at many, many more universities, 60% said it had a meaningful impact on their life. And that was pretty heartening for us. But then we said, all right, but you know, at least these first schools that we did it, these are fairly selective schools. Maybe these are kids with more resources. But then we looked at the subset of the Stanford and the Harvard and the MIT students who were the first in their family to go to college. And for those students, 64% said that Khan Academy had a meaningful impact on their life. And they said things like, this is the tutor that my family couldn't afford, or things like, my high school did not offer AP Calculus, or did not offer it at a rigorous level, and this is where I got the rigor so that when I got to one of these schools, I was ready to engage. And you know, in the same line of thought, a couple of years ago, the College Board, the creators of the SAT, came to us. And they said, look, we're going to redesign the SAT. It's going to be more aligned with what students actually learn in school. And as part of that, we're going to call out the inequity that has been the elephant in the room for 100 years, and that's the test prep industry. And so we want to work with you to create the world's best test prep that happens to be free. And so we've been working on that for about 2 years. We did the soft launch in this past summer. And this next piece gives you a little bit of what's going on there.
Today is the last day students around the country will take the SAT in its current form. That's because starting in March, a new test with lots of changes will be there for high schoolers. Here's NBC's Ann Thompson.
I wanted to start my own business specializing in robotics.
I think I'd like to be a chemist.
The first hurdle to achieving those dreams, the SAT. Today is the last day students will be offered the test in its current form. The new SAT promises to be quite different. All high school students like Amelia Teneo and Minkailu Kanute now also have access to free online tutoring from the Khan Academy.
The software itself acts like a tutor. It shows you, hey, you should probably work on this.
Complete with points and badges.
And once you get to like the more advanced stuff, you get like really cool badges.
Sounds like a video game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The revisions come in the wake of charges of bias against minority and economically disadvantaged students.
For too long, costly test preparation has been seen to give some kids advantages on this test and not others.
Tristan Fields helps Amelia and Min get ready at Kipp College Prep High in the Bronx.
I do think that the test does a better job of assessing whether or not a kid is ready for college in terms of the skills that they will need.
What's this question asking?
Students have been practicing for months with sample tests meant to mirror the new SAT exam beginning in March.
And how have you done on the mock SATs?
I have done well. By the time that I went to Mach 2, I boosted my scores by 200 points.
Building confidence along the way to achieve new possibilities in the future. For today, Ann Thompson, NBC News, the Bronx.
So what's been exciting about that? Oh, thanks. What's been cool about that, whenever you build anything, you're always afraid, well, is it going to be used? And also, is it going to be used by the students who need it most? And so this March administration of the SAT was the first new SAT where we were the prep for it. And the College Board did surveys of the test takers on that Saturday. And it turned out that over 50% of the test takers used Khan Academy. A great, I think 98% said it was useful or very useful. But what was really heartening is it was across all demographics, ethnic demographics, income demographics. So we've been able to, I've been working with folks like the Boys and Girls Club to ensure that the students who need it most are able to have access. And we've already seen a 20% reduction in paid test prep. So, and this is only a few months into it, so it's very exciting. And you know, what's neat about this whole adventure, and we get these letters and these videos all the time, but they just remind us all how much potential there is in the planet if we just give learners the tools to tap into it. And this next testimonial is probably one of the coolest examples of that.
So I actually dropped out of high school twice, both during my freshman year. And when I eventually came back, I was put in sort of lower level math and science classes because I was so behind. Then I discovered Khan Academy, and I was able to skip 2 years worth of math just through using the site. And I came into school, I took the exam with students who had been enrolled in the class all year, and I was actually able to get the highest or the second highest scores in the class. So for me, Khan Academy really changed the trajectory of my entire life, because without it, I don't think I ever really would have been inspired to learn and to love math and to love science. I ended up graduating as a valedictorian and going on to Princeton, where I'm now a computer science major, and I'm absolutely passionate about learning, about computers, about math, about science. And without Khan Academy, I don't think that these things would really matter to me the way that they do today.
So there's a fun epilogue to that story. When we found out he's a CS major, we said, you know, we have internships. And I'll say that to all of y'all too, you know, we have internships. And he applied and he did incredibly well in the interviews. And some of our engineers were like, who is this guy? And we said, well, why are you surprised? We helped educate him. But he actually did incredible, and last summer he did amazing things. We gave him a full-time offer, and he just joined us a few months ago. So in a very strange way, we're helping to solve our own labor problems. So everything I've talked about so far is the world that most of us live in, the developed world, the English-speaking world. But a lot of y'all might be wondering, well, what about the rest of the planet? And all of these are examples, pictures we get from, for the most part, other volunteers, NGOs, taking either the entire platform or offline versions of it or just the videos to villages all over the planet. And each of these are pretty incredible stories. But probably the coolest one is the one in the top right. You know, I used to give talks like this and say, who knows, maybe one day this will be used in Mongolia, just imagining kind of the furthest place on the planet. And then a few months later, I got an email from Mongolia. And it was from that young girl there, her name's Zaya, and she sent an email but had a link to a video, and the video was very similar to Charlie's, where she talked about how she used the site and it helped her really enjoy mathematics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought that was pretty cool, but I immediately assumed that she must be middle class or upper middle class. Her English was quite good. She clearly had access to the internet. But then I read the text of her email more closely, and it turned out that a group of engineers were using their vacation time to go to Mongolia. They were from Cisco Systems. They went to Mongolia and set up computer labs with broadband in orphanages. And what you see in the top right there, those are the orphan girls using Khan Academy, and Zaya was one of those orphans. And that by itself was kind of mind-blowing, something you would read in a science fiction book. But what's been even more exciting, and it really parallels Charlie's story, is that since then, Zaya's gone on to become one of the top contributors of content in the Mongolian language. So it just shows you again, if you give people the tools to tap into their potential, there's an awful lot of potential out there. And so you can imagine with a mission of a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere, it's super important that we're able to reach anyone, anywhere. Part of that is localizing all of the content, not just the videos, the exercises, the teacher tools, everything, making it available on devices that are more accessible to most of the world. We have a lot of efforts going on right over there. And to give you a feeling of at least what the videos feel like in other languages, I'll show you this next video.
Me comí 2 cuartos de pizza.
L'hypoténuse commune, ok.
7, 13, 15.
और मैं इस हाथ से इस ब्लॉक को धकेलने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ इस डायरेक्शन में.
توجد قطعتين من معدن النحاس والزنك.
P R به توان 2 ضرب داره.
הגיעה הנקודה שבה שוק הסיום של הזווית חותכת את מעגל היחידה.
Ili muweze kuelewa na kuweza.
Into kuqala kufuneka siyazi kukuba
16 bölü 16 1'e eşittir.
Muitas e muitas outras coisas importantes.
I'm Zaya from Mongolia. Your videos are so interesting and funny. Make more lessons.
I watch that when I get lazy. So, you know, whenever I see things like, whenever I see things like that video, or, you know, these are other pictures of Khan Academy being used around the world, you know, I tell everyone involved with Khan Academy, and that's, you know, to be clear, Khan Academy is much more than me. We're 100 full-time folks here in Mountain View. We've had thousands of volunteers help us, educators help us. We hope that all of you consider yourselves kind of part of this broader Khan Academy community. And what I tell all of us is I give a bit of a thought experiment. If you were to go back in time about 400 years to Western Europe, which even then was one of the more literate parts of the world, you would see that about 10% of women and 20% of men knew how to read, about 15% on average. And I suspect that if you went to someone who did know how to read, say a member of the clergy, and asked them, well, you know, if you had a perfect education system, what percentage is even capable of reading? They might have told you, well, maybe 40%, 50% with a really good education system. Well, you fast forward to today, and we know that that would have been a wildly pessimistic prediction, that pretty close to 100% of the population is capable of reading. But if I were to ask all of y'all a similar question, what percentage of the population do you think is capable of being a computer scientist, is capable of creating truly novel art, or writing a novel, or starting a tech business, or helping find cure for a disease? A lot of you might say, well, based on my experience, well, right now that number is maybe 1%. Maybe with a great education system, maybe it could be 5 or 10%. But what if that assumption or that prediction is just based on our experience, where we see us and all of our peers, we're pushed ahead at the set pace, and we keep accumulating these Swiss cheese gaps in our knowledge. We miss, you know, a little bit of exponents there, or a little bit of, you know, Krebs' law there, or a little bit of Newton's law there. And so by the time we get to the genetics class, or the calculus class, or the machine learning class, there's just that gap that makes it seem like, oh, you know what? I'm not meant to be a data scientist. I'm not meant to be a cancer researcher. But what if we have a world where everyone, if you're a Zaya, or if you're a girl in a slum in Calcutta, through a smartphone, you're able to fill in all those gaps at your own pace and prove it. And if you're lucky enough to go to a school in the US where you have a teacher, the teacher has the tools where she or he could let every student learn at their own pace, ensuring that they don't that they don't have these gaps. Well, maybe in that world, a lot fewer people are going to hit these walls at these, you know, at organic chemistry or genetics or physics or whatever else. And in that world, maybe it's actually much closer to 50% or 60%. And I'm starting to believe more and more every time we get these testimonials that the number could be closer to 70, 80, or 90%, maybe 100% of the population is really capable of contributing at that level. And, you know, when you think about it that way, it's pretty exciting. I think it's going to be an exciting time to live for the next few decades as all of us kind of explore the world. And I think we have a serious chance of taking this thing called education, this thing that has always been scarce and expensive, but it's always been the key determinant between the haves and the have-nots, and make it a lot more like basic shelter or clean drinking water and just a fundamental human right. Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
Come, let's have a little chat. I want to sit next to him.
Forget it.
He's cool.
Hi. Okay, we have a few questions for you.
All right.
So, to participate in the questions, go to slido.com and put in the hashtag Kai2016, just in case you've forgotten again. All right. Damn it. It was right up. Sorry.
So, thank you, really. These people have been listening to talks for how many days? 5, 6 days. And they were laughing, they were clapping, they were with you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank
really
you.
appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Appreciate
Really.
it.
First question.
So, first question that I want to know, what's next?
What's next? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I talk about international. We have a lot going on there. We have deep focuses on Brazil, Spanish-speaking Latin America. We have a partnership with the Carlos Slim Foundation. We're creating an entity in India where we're literally, we want to create, our long-term vision is to have you could think of it as a reference curriculum or canonical curriculum for everything from kindergarten through the core of college that you can access on any device in your regional language. It could be used in a traditional classroom, or it could be used for true personalized learning and ways to prove what you're doing. And so, we're already talking to folks in places like India about really deep integration with school systems there. Even, they don't need to buy textbooks anymore, and this in fact, will be a lot better. We are doing a big push on mobile as we speak. That's important all around the world. We are continuing to work with the College Board on the SAT. One of the really exciting things that we just launched recently is the PSAT, which 80% of American students, most of us took the PSAT in 10th grade, 80% of American students. When you took it before, it was just like this weird practice, like why did we do that? Now, a student who takes it can go to Khan Academy, type in their code, and all of that information gets slurped into Khan Academy, and so Khan Academy can now personalize. So it'll immediately know, hey, you're weak at that type of algebra problem, you're strong at this type of grammar problem, this type of reading comprehension passage you could use a little bit more work on. And that's exciting just from a personalization point of view. And it's even better because then we can really test the efficacy as students go from PSAT through Khan Academy to SAT.
So are you doing predictive analytics? So can you therefore predict someone's SAT score based on their using Khan Academy and their PSAT scores?
We are going, we're not in it just to create something that feels like nice preparation. We want to make sure that it really is effective. And so, we're working very closely with the College Board on, one, testing efficacy, figuring out which types of activities, interventions actually work the best. And over time, we would like to be able to see if we can predict and give people a sense of where they are.
Okay. So we've got these two questions that people have been voting up and up and up, and they keep sort of overcoming. So as soon as whenever I look down, the other one has gone on top.
We'll do both.
We'll do them both. I'm going to do the one that's currently running second place. And I love this because I feel this question does not get asked enough. And that question is, as a father, how do you balance your whole high-profile career with family life?
Yeah, no, I like that question a lot. Really for my career, it would be a shame if my kids end up really messed up.
Yeah,
it would just
be ironic, really.
It would be bad for the brand. No, look, this is something that I take very seriously. And it's actually, I learned it from my previous boss at the hedge fund, which is most people don't imagine hedge fund, but I remember right when I came out of business school, I was ready to, work 80 hours a week and prove my, and he used to tell me, Sal, you just got to go home. You got to go home. I was like, no, Dan, I'm ready to work. And he's like, no, look, our job is to make a few good decisions, not many bad decisions. And the best way you can do that is go home, recharge, have time with your family. And what was good is he also had his dog with him. And his dog literally had a Pavlovian response to whenever the market closed. And so you couldn't do work in the office anymore because he'd just start. So yeah, I give him Dan, his name is Dan Wohl, a lot of credit there. I even thank him in my book because if he didn't give me that space, I wouldn't have been able to work on Khan Academy. So ever since then, I've had a huge appreciation for creating space in your life. And now that I have a family, I have 3 kids now, and they do grow up so fast.
What kind of idiot would have 3 kids? I mean, I have 3 kids. This is why I can,
No, but it's you. I mean, you appreciate it too. It's what are we here for if you can't have some fun with your kids? And I'm pretty, and I hope, and there's some Khan Academy employees here, that we are a place where while you're at. We're all mission driven and we literally want to do all of this stuff for the world, but if we burn ourselves out in the process or if our family life breaks down or if we're unhappy in some way, then it's all for naught.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask the flip question, all right? Not actually this top question, but they're a little bit lower down. Clearly we have reached so many people with Khan Academy, but what about the kids you don't reach? What about the kids that don't learn in traditional ways. Have you been trying to understand those kids, and what have they taught you that can help you go forward?
Yeah, I think that's actually, you say, what are we working on now? That's actually the big question. Because already today on Khan Academy, if a student is really motivated, he or she can already, they're off to the races. And it is a larger segment of students than I think any of us would have guessed when we were in school, and we'd see only 1% or 2% are really engaged. It looks like 5 or 10%. You give them a resource where they have more agency, and all of a sudden things happen. But what about the other 50, 60, 70%? And there's a couple of different ways you could tackle it. One way to tackle it is you have extrinsic motivators, things like the SAT, things like you want to do well on your exam tomorrow, and that might bring them to Khan Academy. But it's really important that once they come to Khan Academy, that they feel the intuition for the subject. They feel more excited about the subject, and so that we can maybe get them there a little bit. But we're also doing, a lot of things here and there about mindset, growth mindset, grit, resilience. We've worked with Carol Dweck's group. We actually have a learning challenge that just finished here in the Bay Area. We had 10% of all Bay Area students participate, and it wasn't the top 10%. It was over 50% was for students from majority free and reduced lunch schools. But we celebrated students who did well on math progression, but also those that showed a lot of grit and resilience, which we can measure. Hey, you're challenging yourself. You got something wrong, but you didn't give up, and you kept coming to the site, and you eventually powered through that. And so as we've celebrated that, we've seen a lot deeper engagement among students. We see on the site that, look, we're virtual, but if there's a human interaction, if you have a coach on our site, you're more likely to be engaged. So we're exploring ways, how do we get human beings to mentor each other, tutor each other? We're looking at all of the different possibilities.
So the top question feeds into this a little bit. Do you see any risks in the use of gamification, pointsification? Is that it?
Pointification.
Yeah, there you go. In Khan Academy, I feel that my 2 kids are too much into earning points and badges instead of experiencing the joy of mastery, competence, and comprehension.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the side of, we talk a lot about this inside of Khan Academy, and sometimes there's a debate of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. I always think about it as how can we align extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And so, yes, there's points, there's badges, and I see my own son. It means a lot to him. He knows the badges, and he knows what badges I have better than and he compares with his friends and all that. But it brings him to the content. But if the content connects things with it, and he gets it, I do see him then thinking about the content outside of the point and badge system. Just, we're at the supermarket, and he's, hey, that's this, or that's a prime number, or whatever. Well, I wonder if that works that way. So I think I think frankly it's a combination of the two. I think the times where it gets unhealthy, and you see this a lot, and we very much do not want to be that. A lot of ed tech starts to become more edutainment. And so if it's points and badging, and there's something that kind of looks like learning on the side, that's probably not as good as possible. But our items that we put out, I mean, we did this in conjunction with Illustrative Math, one of the authors of the Common Core. We have a lot of the top math experts in the world looking at it. It's at a rigorous level. We don't water down the content. The easiest way to get students even more engaged is to water it down and give them that dopamine even more frequently. So we definitely don't do that.
So I want to pull up a question from a little further down, but it speaks to a theme that we've really worked pretty hard on for this conference. And that's questions about accessibilities. Amal Nanavanti asked, do you have any plans to make Khan Academy more accessible to people with disabilities, such as visual, hearing, or learning impairments? Which covers a lot of ground. But
No, I mean, the simple answer is yes. The I guess more nuanced answer is when and how we get to it. And so, to be truthful, right now, we have some very baseline things, even with things like the College Board, this is stuff that we have to think about because it's just a national exam. And we close caption things and things like that. But we haven't nailed it for any of those use cases yet.
Next question, and it's a good one.
People voted for it, it must be good.
What's the most prominent problem in learning that you believe is still unsolved?
Oh, I think it's, I think there's two. I think the engagement is the big one.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's an impossible. I think most human beings, we are curious. Like, I think 100% of human beings are curious. I think 100% of human beings, when they solve a puzzle, they feel great. 100% of human beings like to solve puzzles, like to learn about the world. But there's a lot in society, popular culture, even the way, the kind of assembly line structure of schools with the grades. And the grades aren't even, I talk about the gaps and all that, but they also brand you. You're a C student, and it's on your forehead, and they treat you like a C student. That kind of crushes you piece by piece by piece. So, but I think engagement is a big one, and kind of unwinding this culture of branding and, pushing people at a set pace. I think that's one. I think another one is, how do you get the creativity of a lot of learning closer to the students earlier? I often say, judging how well someone's going to be a mathematician based on how well they factor polynomials in 8th grade is like judging how good someone's going to be a painter based on how well they mix paint in 8th grade, or how good of a dancer they're going to be based on whether they can touch their toes in 8th grade. And so if we can bring more of the portfolio type of work, and portfolios right now, they're a big deal in what's considered creative fields, like if you're an architect or you're a designer or a musician, but portfolios are relevant in every field, especially in things like computer science. And so if we can bring that closer, and so one of the things that we hope to do is allow students to build portfolios over time, get feedback from peers. Evaluating portfolios is another hard problem. It's a subjective thing. But these are the types of things that we hope to tackle in the next 10 years or so.
We can introduce you to some people who know a lot about evaluating portfolios.
That would be great.
We can have that conversation.
And we are hiring.
Are there people that, are there things that you think Khan Academy will not be able to teach? Like, are there things inherent to the format that are limitations?
I think let me put it this way, there's nothing that we will be able to teach completely. Even in something like math, or, we can do a lot, but we're not, there's something about sitting at a board with a friend and trying to going through a novel proof. Right now, that's hard on Khan Academy. Now, we might be able to connect you with people eventually on Khan Academy, maybe on a virtual board, so we can start to touch on that, but that's going to be leveraging other human beings. In, spaces like, creative writing, there is some baseline knowledge, grammar, things like that, being exposed to different types of writing that we can already do with similar technologies that we have. I do imagine that eventually you could write you write a piece like this and you get peer feedback and things. We could create projects that you can do when you're in a physical environment. So I think what we can do, plus tools that people can, and we can create tools that people can leverage in physical environments, I think then you can tackle a lot.
Okay, one more question. Your design process, there's a lot of people out here that think about how to create technology. How do you work with your users, your learners, to bring them into that design process to make better new technologies?
Yeah, I mean, that's core, and some of our design team is here right now, and we from the get-go are very user-centric. I mean, it goes back to Nadia, and for me, that was a core part of what became Khan Academy. Though even those first videos, it was based on a year of tutoring my cousins. And so today, we very much, we go out there, we say, who is this for? We interact with them. We've even done a fairly extreme thing, which I don't think anyone else in ed tech has done, is that we started a school under our offices. And it's a lab school where it has kind of two goals. Is one, really push the envelope. Now all this digital stuff exists. What could a physical school look like? But also a place for our team, if we want to work directly, like in 5 minutes with real students, real teachers, and parents, how do they interact? And it's not just a lab school. We have partnerships with a lot of the local public schools, private schools, charter schools, where we understand how it's used, and then we try to build things for them.
Well, and that school is also very good at growing tomatoes, I've noticed.
You've seen it?
I walk through there on a
those are
regular
weird
basis.
tomatoes. They're like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how they're quite so good at it.
Yeah, they're big.
They're really good at that. Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we could sit here and ask a million more questions, but we have run out of time. So please give it up for Salman.
Thank you.